of all the lessons we're going to do, the next batch of 4 lessons are probably the most important things you're going to pick up over the course of this course. We're going to look at what I call game plans, and look at there are 4 different game plans in backgammon. We're going to look at one of them each in each of these videos. So there are 4 ways to win over the course of backgammon, or 4 game plans. And the most important thing, I think, is that you become aware of what the different ways to win are over the course of this course. And as you get more advanced at backgammon, you'll find coaches will be saying to you, once you go down a route of a game plan, you need to act in a manner that's coherent with that game plan. We had a question tonight in the class, can you change game plan? Absolutely. But if you're going down a route and there's an obvious move that suits that game plan, you need to stick with it. So for tonight, we're going to stick with the first of the major game plans, which is racing. And I suppose the ideal situation in backgammon would be if we could kind of quietly slip past our opponent's checkers, roll some nice big rolls so that we get ahead of them in terms of what they're kind of rolling and we're rolling, and then just bring our checkers home and win. So that's the idea of racing: avoiding contact, avoiding getting hit, slip by nice and quietly with big rolls, and be in the lead. And the big message that is always kind of one of the mantras in backgammon is, if you're ahead in the race, well, then we need to race. We don't worry about hitting our opponent or putting in blocks or anything like that. We just go for it and we try to get around the board fastest, because ultimately backgammon is a race about getting around the board fastest. So you might well ask, that's very well and good, but how do we measure the race? And let me introduce you to a new term, this idea of pips. If you look at a backgammon board, there are 24 triangles, and each one dot or pip on a dice will move you one forward. So that white checker there is in our 6 point, because it's 6 pips away from finishing off. So why we say it's 6 pips away, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It takes 6 dots in a dice, either a 5 and a 1, or a 6, or 2 3s, or whatever, or 4 and a 2, just to roll that checker off. So that's why we call this point our 6 point, because it's the 6 pips needed to take it off. So here's a situation. You have a look at it here, and you'll just see that our white, we're 1 away, so we've got a 1 pip, and meanwhile the blacks are 2 pips away, and that's why there's a 2 up beside them in the top right hand corner. Let's throw in a couple more checkers. Now we have a situation where white has a 1 and a 6, which add up to 7. That's why the number 7 there. Black has a 2 and a 3, add up to 5. So black has actually slightly less pips to go. Now, a situation like that, it all depends on who's in the lead. So you wouldn't have a situation. We're not worrying about that. We're just giving you an example of counting. We start each game with 167 pips. That's standard. One of the questions tonight was, does that ever change? No, it's always 167. And let's look at an example where we'll go with white. White rolls a 4-1. They play a slightly overly cautious roll, and they come down with the 4 and then bring it to safety. Now look at their 167. They've rolled a 5. 167 take away 5 becomes 162. Black then rolls a 4 and a 3. And think about it, 167. They've rolled 7, so they're going to be at 160 the end of it, aren't they? Let's see how they do that. Black is going to run one of their rearmost checkers down the bottom right forward by 4. They're going to take one of the big stack in the middle and bring it forward. And if you look at their number now, they're 160. So 167 minus 7. But now look what happens. White gets a lucky roll and rolls a 6-3. And they come forward from the back. So the top right comes forward by 6 and then by 3, and they hit black. And now look what happens to the score. Black is suddenly at 175. They're worse off than they were at the very start. And the reason is that checker has been sent back to the start. White, meanwhile, is in 153. And this is an example of white is now ahead in the race, quite significantly ahead. Before they hit, the score was quite close. But the minute they sent black's checker back to the start, they went vastly ahead in the race. And that's really what we're getting at, with this idea of being ahead in the race. And I cannot stress this enough with all my little athletics pictures here. If you're ahead in the race, you want to race. You want to just go for it. Don't be worrying about hitting anybody. You've got the advantage. Go for it. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Here's a situation where we're white. We've got that nice pair of checkers up on the top of the board there, top left. Um, we're building a nice little blockade down the bottom right. You know, if we could catch one of the black checkers, we could probably hem them in and kind of keep them nice and tight. Is that the right thing to do? No. Look at the race stats on the right hand side. We're significantly ahead in the race. Once you're about 10% ahead, divide your score by 10, and if you're more than that ahead, you're well ahead. And at this stage, we're not worrying about hitting our opponent or blocking them in. We're winning the race. It is a race. We're winning, so let's just go for it. So all we do is bring one of our checkers down with the 4. We come down with the 5, and it's now into a straight race. The black can't hit us, and we're significantly ahead. We're going to win, very, very likely to win that race. There's a good explanation video of this if you want another one on YouTube. It's by Mark Olson. I've put the link there, but it just dawned on me that you won't be able to access that link. So if you just go onto YouTube and Google Backgammon Racing, and I think his video is called Racing and Pips, or The Race and Pips or something, worth watching. It's only about 4 or 5 minutes, but another very good example. And always with Backgammon, the more different voices you hear having you tell you things, the more it'll... Okay, it's all very well me saying, if you're ahead in the race, race. But a natural question you're going to have is, well, how do we know if we're ahead in the race? And there's a number of little techniques you can use to help you make this judgment. So the first one of these, I'm working from the top down, is if you're playing on an app, the app's going to tell you. So in this situation here, the app I use is XG, and it tells me on the right hand side that my opponent is on 121 points, I'm on 97 points, so it gives me completely the score. It makes it very easy just to count. It's usually very easy online. Sometimes in competitions you aren't allowed to use online counting, but that would be rare, and most of the time when you're playing, it's a really handy little device, so we don't have to worry about counting usually when we're playing online. But when you're playing over the board on a Monday night in Ashford and you don't have the comfort of an app to help you, you could be forgiven for looking at the board thinking, I just don't know who's ahead or not. So a few things there are different techniques you can use to work out who's ahead in the race. The first of these, the green panel there is, well, who's been getting the bigger numbers? If your opponent's been rolling double sixes 2 or 3 times and you've been rolling kind of 2 1s and 3 1s and 4 1s, well, they're going to be ahead because they've just rolled the bigger numbers. The problem with this is, I think as humans, we naturally remember our opponent's good numbers and forget ours. So we kind of have this thing, our opponents, she's been getting great rolls and I've been getting rubbish. And it's a little bit prone to human error. So we move on to the second one, the blue panel there. Let's have a look at the board and see visually who looks closer to the home board, who's got the more checkers on their home board. And just as if I said to you, which is closer to the equator, Ireland or France, and you'd look at the map and see, you look at the board and it'll give you an indication of who's shunted forward. But it's still a pretty blunt instrument and it's still prone to huge errors, and you don't know, particularly if there's a wide dispersal in checkers, it's hard to tell sometimes. So the system that a lot of Irish players use is this concept of crossovers. And let me show you how crossovers work. So we take a board. In that board, there are 4 quadrants. Bottom left, bottom right, top left. And if we could take one of our white checkers, that white checker is on our 20 point. I don't know if you can see the number 20 there. That means that checker has 20 pips. 20 dots on a dice will be needed to get that checker home and off the board. But we also can move that checker into the next quadrant. We're still doing the usual route that I do in these videos, bearing in our home board is our bottom right. So if we need to bring it the whole way around the board, if we move it into the next quadrant, we call that a crossover into the next quadrant. And then we can move it to the next quadrant with another crossover, and we can move into the next quadrant with another crossover. So this checker up here needed 3 crossovers to get into our home board. And it's quite an effective method to get a rough guide of who's in the lead, to see who's got the most crossovers left. And in this, let's take a situation like this. Now we've got 2 checkers needing to cross over, so we got 2 crossovers to get into our home board. Our opponent up the top there has 3, so if we got 2 and our opponent has 3, we're probably slightly ahead. And if you look at the scores, we are slightly ahead. But it's still prone. It's still not very accurate. Because let's look at this situation. Now we've 2 crossovers to get into our home board, and our opponent has 2 crossovers to get into our home board. Does that mean we're tying? No, because we need 6s to get our checkers home into our home board. Our opponent can roll anything in there, any 1s or anything will do. So even with, I think if our opponent had 3 checkers, they'd be ahead. 3 checkers on their 7 points, because they're just so easy. So what I'm saying is crossovers aren't 100% acceptable or accurate. However, let's give this situation where we're playing a match here. We're white. We're looking at the 4 checkers in our outer board there. 4 checkers to cross over. So we've got 4 crossovers. Black, on the other hand, the 2 at the bottom will need 2 crossovers each to get in. So the 2 by 2 is 4. Plus they've 1 on the top to bring in. So they've 5. So we've 4. They've 5. You look at their home board, and if anything, we're slightly better off. So that says to me we're slightly ahead. And sure enough, if you look at the scores, we are. So crossovers are a good rough measure, and for a lot of Irish players, that's as much as they do. A lot of kind of amateur, intermediate players, crossovers will do. It gives them an idea of where they're at, and they'll work. They're content just to be that level of accuracy. But if you really want to get good, and a lot of you, I get the impression, really want to kind of say, no, I want to be the best I can possibly be. Eventually, you're going to have to get to a level where you're counting pips, and you're literally looking at this. So I gave an example of this where you're working. We start with our opponent, Black. They have 5 in the 1 point. 5 1s are 5. They have 4 in the 2 point. 4 2s are 8. And they have 3 in the 6 point. 3 6s are 18. And they literally just tot them up, and they add that up like that, and they get 31 points. We're, on the other hand, we have 1 1 is 1, 3 2s, 6, 2 3s are 6, 4 4s are 16, and 2 6s are 12. And if I've done my maths right, that'll add up to 41. So you literally have to eventually learn methods. There's not just a class, and there's a lecture series on how to learn counting methods. Don't worry about it for now, but as you get better, you're going to find you're doing a lot of that. So I have homework for you, and it's very simple. When you're playing your games of the next week, when you're just be conscious of when you're heading the race to race. And there's one of Wicklow's finest athletes there, just as an example. So we had a very interesting situation in playing tonight after the lesson where Anna was playing Chris. Anna's Black. She'd been holding on there, hoping to get a shot at Chris. Chris had been holding his last checker at his outer board, not trying to give Anna a direct shot. Anna needed an 8 to hit Chris in a row, and heartbreakingly, she rolled a 7. So she didn't want to get too close to Chris, so with the 1, she just moved one of the checkers forward in her home board. But with the 6, she had no choice. She had to move that defensive checker forward and nudge up to beside Chris. Simply had no choice. And give Chris a shot at her. And Chris surveyed the situation, and to his kind of excitement, he rolled a 3 and a 2. And if you'd like to pause the video now for a second and just think about how would you play a 3 and a 2 here, and assuming you've now unpaused it, well, it surely it's straightforward. With the 2, we hit. Surely hitting's good. We hit, and we can bring our checker in. But the problem with that is now if Anna rolls a 6 or a double 3, she hits them, and the leadership of the game changes right over. So she'd actually have don't worry about why the odds, but the odds are a 1 in 3 chance of hitting him. So let's not give her a 1 in 3 chance. So instead of bringing that checker in, we looked at, well, maybe Chris takes the checker on his 4 point and moves that forward to 3. Now Anna can hit him with a 6-3 or double 3s. There's only, I can tell you, it's a 1 in 12 chance of hitting him. But the way I see it is, if someone's shooting at you and they have a 1 in 12 chance of hitting you, would you prefer that, or for them to have no chance of hitting you? And in Chris's situation, rather than hitting her at all, he just needed to jump over her and bring his checker in, and that brings him to safety. And Anna could roll double 6s and still steal the game, but when Chris moves to that position, we looked it up. He's about an 84% chance of winning. If he hits her and even does the safest option, hitting her, he's only about a 75% chance of winning. So that message here, your homework, if you're heading the race, and for the next week, that's what I want you to focus on.